Welcome students. This is chapter 5 Introduction to XML. This is the session 1 in which we are going to see about the XML understanding. And these are the learning objectives of this particular session. To start with, what is XML and why the XML is used, and what is the technology behind using XML, and how we can compare the XML language with other languages, and what are the essential requirements and the essential basics in order to learn the XML language. About all these things we are going to cover in this particular session. So let's get started. So what is XML? XML stands for Extensible Markup Language. What is the meaning of extensible? The main meaning behind the extensible is that the users can create their own tags. It means in HTML, users cannot create their own tags. Whatever we want to use, we need to use the predefined tags that are defined inside the HTML, such as body, head, whatever it is. But here, the users can create their own tags with their own requirements and specifications. It means that it is very handy enough in order to handle any kind of data. That is why that's the beauty of this XML language. And why markup language? We already know HTML is also a markup language. So what does it mean? It means that the markup language tells the browser how to display the information. So whatever the changes we make in our program, the browser will understand with the help of this markup language. And XML is mainly used in order to store and transport the data. It means that XML acts as even a database, where we can store and transport the data to whichever format we need. And these are some of the facts about XML. To start with, XML is also a markup language like HTML. This we already saw. So what is the difference? The difference is, in HTML, the HTML used to tell how to display the information, and they use predefined tags. So HTML just tell how to display the data, how to display the information to the browser by using some of the predefined tags. Then what does the XML do? XML used to tell how to store the data, and they use only user-defined tags. So HTML tells how to display the data, and XML tells how to store the data. HTML uses predefined tags, whereas XML uses user-defined tags. These are some of the similarities between these two languages. XML is self-descriptive. It means that, as I said earlier, by using XML, you can create your own tags, own attributes, which you can use them in your program. So it describes itself. That is the reason XML is known as a self-descriptive language. XML is also a cross-platform and case-sensitive language. It means that cross-platform in the sense XML can work in any browsers, in Internet Explorer, Mozilla Firefox, and Google Chrome, whichever browser it works. And it is also case sensitive, whereas HTML is not a case sensitive language. Even if you give a lowercase or uppercase, it doesn't make a difference. But here, it does make a difference. If you give different cases, it shows an error. The opening tag, whatever the case it is, the same case must be given for the closing tag also. So XML is quite case sensitive. And why XML is used? XML is used because it is simplicity in nature. It means that XML, as I said, we can create our own tags and attributes, so the users will not find any difficulty towards creating any program. They adapt their own tags and own attributes without going behind the predefined tags. The second use is that it can integrate multiple data sources. It means that XML is used to extract the data from multiple sources, and means it can extract data from an Excel sheet, it can extract data from a database, it can extract data from a web page. So whichever the data source might be, it extracts the data from them. This is the main usage of XML. So we can import the data from XML inside an Excel sheet, and we can even export the data or extract the data from the Excel sheet inside a XML web page. So this is a quite usefulness behind this. Now you can ask me one question. What is the usefulness behind this? Consider if a person doesn't know an XML coding, he does know only the Excel sheet. So he can use this particular XML facility of multiple data sources where he can type his data in an Excel sheet and he can transfer that particular Excel sheet to a programmer. So again, the programmer need not write the same thing again. He can just convert that Excel sheet into a XML coding. So that is a quite usefulness behind that. So it saves time, it saves money, it saves a resource. That is the main reason XML is capable of extracting data from multiple data sources. Not only that, it also is very extensible. So but as we create our tags on our own, it can be adapted in any situations where we need. And it is platform independent. As we said, it is a cross-platform. XML documents can be worked with irrespective of any hardware or software present inside your system. So they work in all browsers respectively. So these are some of the uses of XML. And what is the technology behind using XML? To start with, XML technology is divided into three separate categories, or three separate sections. The first section goes for content, the second section goes for structure, and the third section goes for presentation. Let's start with the content. Content. What is the content? Content is nothing but the actual XML document. The document which you use to type the XML coding is known as the content. Those XML documents are saved with the extension of .xml. XML document is based on a structure which is defined separately. It means that whatever document in XML you create, they must be created based on a structure. Without a structure, like an XML document cannot work. Structure. In my previous section I said all XML documents must be working based on a structure. That structure is nothing but some rules and regulations. So the structure enforces some rules and constraints on the tags that are created by the user. So whenever the user creates a tag with the help of the content section, the structure will be able to construct a particular rules and constraints for the tags. So remember, the code must be constructed based on the structure. So I have written here, based on the structure component, the content component must be formed. So without a structure component, the content component, if it is formed, it will be in error. So please be very careful. You have to use the structure, and according to that structure only, you have to create your content. An XML document which follows the structural rules is known as a well-defined document. Consider if your document, XML document, that's your XML content document, follows all the structural rules, then it is known as a well-defined document. If it is not following any structural rules, then we can call it as a non-well-defined document. A method of checking the document is known as a schema. Normally we say schema in a database. Here, the method of checking the constraints that are present in the document based on the structure is known as schema. So, our structure can be divided into two separate sections. One is DTD. DTD stands for Document Type Definition. And XSD stands for XML Schema Definition. About all these things we'll be seeing in our upcoming sessions. Our third section is about the presentation. As the name suggests, presentation provides various styles just like our CSS when we use in HTML. So presentation section is used to provide some styles for our XML document. And here also, even in our XML document, CSS can be used. With the help of CSS, we even have an exclusive language for XML. for giving styles, that is known as XSL. XSL stands for XML Style Sheet Language. XML separates the presentation part from the structural part. It means what? As we seen in our HTML and CSS, HTML is known as the structural part and CSS is known as the presentation part. The HTML separates the content of the CSS separately. So here also the same thing follows. So XML separates the presentation part, that is the XSL part or the CSS part, from the structural and the content part. So the presentation part is separate and content and the structure parts are separate. So why is it useful? It is useful because we can make them access very quickly, very easily. So the consistency will be maintained. And remember, this GTD, that is the document type definition, or XML schema definition, and even XSL are not compulsory in creating an XML document. If you need to specify a structure, you can specify a structure, but it is not compulsory in order to form an XML document. But it is advised to follow a structure in order to create an XML document. How we can compare XML with other languages? Consider, XML mainly focuses on data, but whereas HTML focuses on how data looks. As we have discussed earlier, XML focuses only on how to store the data, but whereas the HTML looks at how to present the information. XML is used for describing the information. It is used to describe the data present inside your tags, but whereas HTML is useful only for displaying, it just displays the information. And in XML, tags are not predefined. User creates his own tags. We already know that. But in HTML, the tags are predefined. In XML, tags are case sensitive, as I said already. Here in HTML, the tags are not case sensitive. And the most important part is that in XML, the tags must be properly nested. Nesting in the sense, consider normally in HTML, after giving head, we might give body. Before closing the body section, we'll close HTML. So most probably in most browsers, HTML won't detect any errors. Even if we leave one closing tag of HTML, it doesn't display any error. But in XML, it displays an error. So remember, in XML, tags must be properly nested. But in HTML, it is not required. When we compare our XML language with our XSL, as we have seen earlier, XML stands for Extensible Markup Language and XSL stands for Extensible Style Sheet Language. XML is used to create and describe a new document with the user-defined tags. We already know that. And in XSL, as I said, XSL is a style sheet language. It is used to convert your structural document, structural content into a presentational structure. And XML is a subset of HTML. Only based on HTML, XML has arrived. So HTML stands for Standard Generalized Markup Language. Whereas XSL is an application of XML. So only based on XML, you can apply that XSL. And structure is kept away from the content. So in XML, as we seen earlier, structure is separate and the context, the section is separate. But here in XSL, used to format and display the data stored. Whatever the data you're giving, it displays. That's it. This is the main use of the XML compared with other languages. I hope you understood this. Now, let's go to the basics of XML. There are some rules in order to construct an XML document. The rules are like, unlike HTML, all XML elements must have a closing tag. It means that, as I said already, in HTML, even if you don't close the tag, that doesn't make an issue. But in XML, it makes an issue. So remember, in XML, all the tags must be closed. XML tags are case sensitive, where the starting and the closing tags must be with the same text, with same cases. This we have seen already. So remember this, if you are going to give the same text, if you are going to use this tag, see to that you have the same text in the same case for that. XML elements must be properly nested because improper nesting may result in offending the structure. So if your XML document is based on a structure, then in structure if you say only after this particular element this element must come, then you have to follow the same structure in your document also. If you go against that structure, you're offending it, you're against that particular rule. If you're against that particular rule, your program will display an error. XML documents must have a root element. So all XML documents will have a root element, that is a base element. Only based on that base element, all other elements will be coming inside that. And remember, XML elements must have some attributes, and these attributes are quoted within double quotes. So our XML can be divided into two particular sections, that is the element and the attribute. XML elements. In XML, tags are also known as elements. So hereafter in our session we are not going to call them as a tag, we are going to call them as an element. Without using the elements in XML, it is not possible to construct an XML document. So please remember, if you are going to use elements in your program, you have to use them. Without using them, you cannot construct your XML program. XML document contains one root element, as I said. All these root elements contain all other elements present inside that. If you are not nesting the other elements inside the root element, it is a big issue and it's a big error. And a set of naming rules. So we have certain naming rules for elements. What are those? Element names can be letters, number, or any other special characters. So please remember this. Element names can be letters, numbers, or any other special characters, but element names cannot start with a number or a special character. So element names must start only with a letter. Element names cannot contain spaces. So please don't provide spaces when you're creating your element names. And this is the sample syntax. Just whatever the element name you want to give, just give that and see to that your cases are similar to the opening as well as the ending. If they are similar, then you're the winner. XML attributes. What are attributes? Attributes are nothing but some additional feature if you want to give for your tag, that is known as an attribute. So they explain the characteristics of a tag. So just like HTML, here also we are going to give attributes for XML, but the only difference is here they are not predefined. The XML attributes are user defined. The attributes must be enclosed within the double quotes, as we have discussed earlier. Attributes are provided like a name and a value pair. It means that when you provide a particular attribute, it comes with a name equals some value, just like our HTML. Just the following syntax. As you can notice, this is our element name, space, my attribute, this is the name value, equivalence, the value pair. Consider I'm creating an element with the name student, and the attribute is ID, and the value will be 1000. Consider. So this is how I can create elements, attributes, and values. So I'll show a sample example so you can understand it very clearly. Now coming to a practical example, I have already created a sample XML file. I'll just show you the code behind that and we'll start our explanation. To start with, just open this XML file by just right clicking it. Open it, Notepad. After you click that Notepad, you can see a coding present here, which I have written it already. The first line says, this particular highlighted portion says that this particular document is a XML document. This information is provided to the browser, and this particular XML document belongs to the version 1. And after that, the user can create his own codings. As you can see, the root element as we have seen earlier, each and every XML document must have at least one root element. Here, the root element is considered as this particular student. And this student element contains many other sub-elements, as you can see there. So roll number is one of the sub-element present inside the root element. Name is also one of the element. Age is one of the element. And you can see here course is having an attribute named ID, and the value for that is anything like MBA 1122. So by this we can understand that whatever tags or whatever elements we need, we can create with the help of using XML. So in this particular document, there is no predefined tags or attributes. So how to execute this? So after typing all your coding, just go to File, click Save As. After clicking Save As, just type your file name .xml and just save it. If you save it, this particular file will be converted into an XML file. The next step will be of execution. During execution, just open this in your any browser which you have in your system. I'm going to use throughout this particular tutorial only in Microsoft Internet Explorer. The main reason behind using Microsoft Internet Explorer is that we have certain validation tools. In this program, in our earlier program, we didn't use any DTD or XSD. No structure is provided, just we had the content. But instead, if we give a structure, then automatically we need to have a particular browser to validate our document according to the structure. So fortunately for Internet Explorer, we do have that tool, which we'll see in our next session. So I'm just opening this in my Internet Explorer. As soon as I open, I can see the code just here. As you can see, the code is displayed here, and when you right click this, you can see at the bottom validate XML and view XSL output. This is the tool which I said to validate your XML document. This tool is provided only in Microsoft Internet Explorer. That is the reason I am using Microsoft Internet Explorer. So you will not be seeing any design or anything like we saw in HTML, just the document displays. If you get this, your output is verified. So this is how we must test it. Consider how now we didn't specify any structure. Now I'll just right click this and click this validate XML option here. So it says me that validation is successful. So my document is perfect according to the structure. I'm just closing it. So this is how our basic program works. Now let's get back to the slides. Okay, our next session will be on XML in depth. So in this particular session, I hope you understand the basics of XML, how to operate, how to create a code, and I hope so this might have helped you in understanding the program. So let's meet in next video. Thank you.